Hey, how are you? Sounds good. Here, let me just share. Perfect. So I like a lot of the changes you made. Still have some questions. So do you want to just do the usual and kind of walk through it? So one thing that I thought would be useful when we've got fairly information heavy chapter here, which I'm digging a lot of the stuff that's happening. It occurred to me at one point that for the reader that might be important to suss out what do we find out in this chapter. So what is new information we didn't have before, and I've highlighted all of those blue for myself. I just sort of went through and I said, oh, that's new, that's new, that's new. Then I thought, okay, what's important information for later and what's not important information for later. And the reason to me that was important to kind of differentiate between the two is to know how to use your real estate. So with the chapter, so, for example, for the first 9 pages, just to sort of summarize, for the first 9 pages, let me just make sure I'm right. Where are we here? Where's the thing I'm looking for? Sorry, making myself and you probably dizzy looking for this. Bear with me. Okay, so up until not 9 pages, but 7 pages. So for 7 pages, like I'm just looking at it from the perspective of a reader, for 7 pages, we have a conversation lead up to a conversation between Ramona and Julius and a character who dies. So as soon as the character dies, the question then becomes, because again, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat sort of something I said the last time we met. It's beautiful how much information is revealed. There's this really gorgeous insight into this character, and you do a lot of sort of relationship building. Certainly, the relationship between him and Zeus Tax, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the conflicted relationship. No, it's very cool. And so we've got all this information about what he's thinking and what he's feeling. Um, Again, I'm talking about Azamathet. Um, and sort of how he's interpreting and what he's learning about these characters, and it's sort of like, oh, this all seems really important. Like usually an author won't spend as much time as you have describing a character, describing the relationship between him and other characters, showing him gathering a bunch of information from the two of them. Let me just skip down. I'm going to kind of go all over the place here. So we're getting a lot of information while he was and it's good. While he was electrocuting the male, he peeked into the mind of the female Ramona. The male was called Julius, and Ramona was his companion. I'm just going to cut a thing there. He was a companion, partner, and student. Instead of simply scanning her mind and etc., goes into all this detail. I'm like, oh wow, this character, for the author to be going into this much detail about this character and using up a lot of the chapter's real estate, this character is going to be really important later. Like he's definitely going to become super important. He's asking all these questions to Julius. Um, Really important questions too. Yes, Julius answered, while Ramona's mind silently responded with a contradictory no. I love that. And as I'm going through it, oh, why did that stay there? Ugh, ignore that. Um, where are we here? Oh, why didn't it say that? Okay, here we go. Now he's sort of looking into her mind. Ramona's mind provided no substantial information, but he delved deeper, catching glimpses of her joining the BPA and their arrival due to the loss of et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay, we as the reader already know all of that. So if the author is telling us that this guy is learning all of this stuff, it's like, oh shit, he's totally going to use that against her later. Why would the author write that if it isn't important later? Because we already know that. So we're going to move forward. So I'm gathering up all this information, catching glimpses of wolf-like creature. I'm like, oh shit, it sort of looks like he's finding out all this information that he's definitely going to use against Julius and the team. So I'm like, oh fuck, man, they're hooped because they're revealing all this information to this guy, and he's dead. And so my suggestion would be, usually, while it's all great, if this guy dies, you're using up 7/12, near over half of your chapter, showing him going through all of this with them just to die. And it's sort of like, oh, so it doesn't really matter that he found out all this information because he's dead. So none of it matters. So my first thought was suggesting that you don't kill him, you kill somebody else, um, or you consider the possibility of cutting it, because the real information we get. So here, let me go through all the information that I'm getting. I'm getting his name. I'm getting the thing about the fortress. I'm getting the thing about Zoo's tax. I'm finding out that he doesn't like this guy because he considers him an inferior. I hear a reference to the nectar is too important for me to be disturbed by the problems of Zootax. I don't know what that means, but it sounds important. I'm assuming I'm going to find out more about that later. Exactly. So, raided their little home and captured dozens of crippled human. Okay, so we find out what he did. We find out how they feel about what any being that doesn't have telepathy or men. I'm like, this is good. I'm getting lots. They captured. So I'm going through all of this information. So my first thought is, every single one of these things one would assume is being mentioned because it's important to the story, or it will be important later. And so I'm right going through all this. Captured the slaves. This is good. But and so not a lot there. I find out that this is the El Noon beachhead. I don't know exactly what that means, but it starts to be revealed as the chapter goes on. Still not getting a lot of new information. Delve deeper. Cat finds out all the stuff about her. The blue. It's not blue here because we're finding out for the first time, but because he's finding out for the first time, and we assume if he's finding it out, it's important. It won't be, but it looks like it is here. Um, yeah, I would do one of two things. Like, for example, I like where your head's at. If this guy dies, then it's less important what he finds out than it is what Julius and Ramona find out. So it's really, when does Asbeth start saying things that are important for the story for Julius and Ramona to find out? When he says stuff like, "Do the humans know that the ziggurat will be used to bring forth more troops?" I'm like, ooh, that was a stupid thing to say. Julius is going to tuck that one away for sure. Has Julius come to capture the gateway? Holy fuck, is that where we are? You're stupid, Asmathet. Thanks for telling me all this stuff. And I like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not mocking it. Um, mhm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, that's great. Um, Totally fair. Absolutely. So the key information, if you're gonna kill him off, then I don't really, I mean, you can do this if you want, but I don't really need to know that he's got this conflict with this guy because he's going to be dead in a couple of seconds anyway. I don't need to know that he thinks he's an inferior. That could be juicy if you want to keep it, but not essential. We The nectar, obviously, you're gonna let him live. Okay. That's perfect because then if I'm you and you're probably going to do this anyway, I would 100% catalog everything he found out about Ramona and Julius and especially her and absolutely have it used later. If it isn't, then there's no point in showing him getting this information in this chapter. Because just simply because where we really start, at least where I really started getting new information, started at about page 9. Here's where I went, what is this thing? Hive, nest, fortress, something? And that this is the point in the story when I went, okay, now we're starting to find stuff out. That was page 9. They stalked towards where they thought the portal was. Oh, and I'm like, shit, more information. He needed to ensure it was closed. Oh my god, this sounds important. Otherwise, this entire episode would be a waste of time when the next wave of Al Noon arrived. God, I would love to have heard that the first time we saw Julius. What's going on in Julius? At least early enough for me to go, what's this chapter for? If he's alive, that's important at the end. Portal Arch itself appeared to be. I love this description of the Portal Arch. Purple potion, protection against mind magic. Like it really starts taking off. The chapter really starts taking off at page 9. So my thought would be, it's actually I would maybe maybe you start there, or at least you get as close to this as possible. The big note is the first 7 pages. I would go through the first 7 pages, decide what you really need there, and get it down to like 3 or 4 pages. And I know that sounds like what in half? That's mental. Not really. because I think you get there because where it really starts getting excited is Julius. What I dig that Julius is doing, and now it makes sense that he like sort of effortlessly gets out of this thing is he's basically allowed himself to be caught is how it looks. He's allowed this sort of to drag out so that he can take the arrogant this arrogant El Noon who thinks he's in control, let him ask a bunch of questions, think he's reading his mind, only for Julius to get answers he needs. So, in other words, it's all a big dupe. Julius is allowing himself to get caught so that he can get the information he needs. If that's what you're, because that's exciting to me that he would do that, then I would jump, as quick as you can. Let me just see. Yeah, you're right. I would probably get as close to that blue thing as possible. I think you're gonna tighten this up to probably 9 or 10 pages, and they're gonna flow a bit better and be more fun. No, I can't imagine Julius would there's only one circumstance I can imagine he would let this guy go. For sure, he's killing this guy unless he thinks keeping him alive is to his advantage. And then you just have to figure out what might that be. Um, then it's a question of, yeah, that's perfect. So my idea would be he stuns him. Ramona thinks he killed him. He's like, nope, he's not dead. But what he needs is to get away. So getting away is the only thing, and the only reason he would intentionally let him live is if there was some good reason to do it, which you've just outlined. So I love that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would ramp up the surprise when Julius busts loose. Like I would have Julius looking like he's not getting out right up until you're sort of doing that here, right up until the last minute, and more importantly, having I'm going to call him A really think he's got him, and then Julius. It's sort of in here. It's sort of in this line here. This right. Nope, that's not the one. It's I did say I would kill you if you hurt her again, and I always keep my promises. Um, I love that because it's sort of like and then he busts loose. And my suggestion would be, I did say I would kill you if you hurt her again. I always kept my promises. Lead with Julius, not Asmathat. In the next sentence, I would go like, but Julius leapt for whatever before could figure out what he did. Like I would show him doing that and go, what? And then this happens. You've got it almost there, but I thought it might be a little more like right up until that moment, build up that whole idea that Asmathat really thought he was in control of this moment, and it's obviously all there. And then Julius goes, "Fooled you! I've been in charge the whole time." So if you can get that, would be my suggestion that you get that first 8 pages, 7, 8 pages down to like 4 or 5, and really build up what you've already got there, which is he really thinks he's in control. Julius flips the table at the last minute. Um, okay, so if fair, that's a good point. But if Julius stuns him and knocks him out, only for him to recover and come back, that's gonna Asmathat's going after Julius anyway. Anyway, you slice it as Asmathat's. Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay. How would that go? That would be so there wouldn't be any you wouldn't have this cool kind of finale here to on page 7. He would just walk out and Julius and her would she would just escape. Okay. So Asmathet never discovers that Julius busted free because if no matter this is where I'm going with that. If your main concern is that you don't want to do anything that makes Asmathet go after Julius specifically, that to me would mean that he never discovers Julius broke free. Because if Julius did break free and I'm Asmathet, for sure I'm putting my sights on Julius. Right, but that wouldn't be part of the plan. That would just be a matter of course. Like Julius, by escaping, Julius has no way of guaranteeing Asmathat won't find out. You're just saying that Asmathat won't find out. So it's not really part of a plan. Okay. Okay. So Asmathat doesn't find out until much later that Julius escaped. Okay. Cool. There we go. Okay, so I would love to see a version of that. And then that I think honestly, Hayden, that would sort of address the things that I was mostly concerned with is you've got such great stuff here. And I just thought there's so much information there that I would just want to make sure you were, as the artist or the author, were in complete control of knowing what information do I need to reveal and what if I don't. If Asmathet dies, half of this information isn't necessary. If he lives, suddenly it becomes super interesting for him to have gotten that information for Ramona. And now I'm dying to also because I want him to live, by the way, because all of this setup with Zeus tax and all of that stuff, I'm like, oh God, I can't wait to see how this plays out later. Because if there's a hope of the Elnoon being defeated, it has to be somewhere in this division that sometimes exists between the Elnoon. Yeah. I love that. And I love that from what you've told me in the past that that's the Elnoon's Achilles heel is, once they conquer any area at all, it's just a matter of time before they fuck themselves by in. There you go. Very cool. The only other thing there, and you can just go through this at your leisure, is just again watching repetitive phrases. Tunneling, tunnels, telepathic appears quite an inferior, appear quite a few times. Yeah, and you can do stuff like roared his mental challenge. Like sometimes it's always just finding synonyms for a word, kind of thing like that. By the way, are you meaning to say locusts or locust? Oh, locusts. I figured it was locusts. Okay. Yeah, I would just go through because that's a check. Big thing as always is you want to avoid those repetitious phrases, not simply because it gets boring to see he keeps saying the same word over again, but it suggests a lack of knowing, sort of a lack of imagination on the author's part, which you don't have, and you don't want to give that impression. So once those are fixed up, the big thing is simply, yeah, I love your suggestion. Keep them alive. Suddenly that makes sense of all of this information being dropped. And then you actually don't have to cut a lot. Actually, by the simple act of keeping him alive, almost all of the stuff that's currently in this chapter, keep it and don't cut it. And just in that, you can ignore this too. This is an orphan just sitting here, I think. Why is that there? Drives me crazy. Um, yeah, just a matter now of tweaking how he and Julia separate. Sounds good. Yeah, that's fair. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm just going to leave this here like this, for some reason, some of the comments I made have these weird little orphans. Drives me crazy, and I don't want you to be confused. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. And the eating of brains allows you to essentially get the information from their mind. Is that the idea? No, I love that. I'm a big fan. I love that. Those are the kinds of things that don't have to make sense. They just have to be. And you're like, that's gross. Cool. So totally. Awesome. Okay, I'll send you these notes right away because I know time is of the essence. Fair. Totally fair. No, that's just lovingly disgusting. I love it. Yeah, and the key learning for writing in general, and I'm sure you captured this anyway, the key learning for writing in general is always make strategic, conscious choices about what information you reveal to the reader in a chapter. And you can have description that isn't absolutely essential. I don't want to ever give the impression that everything must be essential later. But core information, when you are giving a lot of information, make sure it's stuff that's not perishable information and is important later when we get to the story. And by keeping him alive, you've justified having all that detail in there. For next meeting, I've got us for Monday, but do you want to meet, if we could, do you want us to meet sooner? Well, let me just double check. We are at, where is my thing? Sorry, I didn't be real quick here. Okay, so we have had let me just double check. I just want to make sure we're using the time effectively. The month of June, we used backup sessions for. So we've met 1, 2, 3, 4. We've met 4 times in June already. The 5th, 13th, 20th, and 22nd. But let's do one more. I won't worry about that one. And then we can focus on what happens in July after that. What is your thought, by the way? Do you want, no pressure at all, but do you want to continue in July, or do you need to take a break for a while financially? Okay. Yeah, never any pressure. I just want to make sure that if you do want to continue, we get those sessions scheduled. So the next session, we'll just make that sort of the wrap up of the bank sessions. And when do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? We can do it tomorrow. We can do it Saturday. We can do it Sunday. We can do it Monday. But okay. We can do it Saturday. We can do it Saturday morning. We can do it Sunday morning. Tomorrow will be a bit tight, but we could do it. I mean, I could do it tomorrow morning. It's up to you. Okay. Just gonna make this down for the 25th. For sure. Yeah. No problem at all. Okay, hang on. Oh, cool. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure we've got the right date here. That's okay, so not Ooh. Oh, I screwed up the time. Hang on. Okay, so we're gonna make it Sunday at 10 a.m. Still work? Yeah, give me a shot. I do have an appointment at 10 a.m. on Saturday, so if you want to change it, it would probably be 11 on Saturday. But yeah, just let me know. Okay, sounds good. Okay, best of luck, and cheers.